In a small, crowded street in Abaddon, Chike sat on the wooden step of their one-room apartment, holding his little daughter Adaeze in his arms. She was barely 6 years old, her hair tied in small braids, her eyes full of questions no child should carry. Her mother had left 2 nights ago, without a word. The only trace of her departure was the empty space where her clothes once hung and the silence that replaced her voice. "Daddy, where's Mama?" Adaeze asked softly, clutching the hem of his worn shirt. Chike swallowed hard, forcing a smile he didn't feel. She traveled, my daughter. But I'm here. I will never leave you." The neighbors whispered behind closed doors, shaking their heads at Chike's misfortune. A man abandoned with a child. What future could he possibly give her? But Chike didn't let their words reach Adaeze. He bent down, kissed her forehead, and whispered a promise that would guide his life. "No matter how hard it gets, Adaeze, I will take care of you." That night, as the rain pattered against the zinc roof, father and daughter huddled together under a thin blanket. Though fear lingered in his heart, Chike found strength in the tiny arms wrapped tightly around him. The sun rose over the bustling Dugby market. Chike stood tall despite his weary frame, balancing a heavy sack of grains on his shoulders. Sweat dripped down his face as he staggered forward, his muscles aching. Every coin he earned mattered. It meant Adaeze could eat. It meant her school fees could be paid. From a distance, Adaeze sat on a small wooden stool near a shop, waiting for him. Her uniform was secondhand and a little too big, but she wore it with pride. She waved at him excitedly as he returned from offloading goods. "Daddy, my teacher said I did well in class today," she said, her eyes shining. Chike dropped the sack, panting heavily, and forced a smile. "That's my Adaeze. You will be greater than me one day. All this work I'm doing, it's for you." Sometimes he skipped meals just so she could have enough to eat. On days he had only 10 naira left, he would buy her a small snack and pretend he wasn't hungry. At night, as Adaeze slept peacefully, Chike would sit by the window, rubbing his calloused hands together, whispering a prayer for strength. His body was breaking, but his spirit remained unshaken. For him, fatherhood was sacrifice, and he was willing to give everything to keep his daughter's hope alive. School was supposed to be Adaeze's escape, but poverty followed her even into the classroom. Her classmates laughed at her worn shoes, the soles almost peeling. At lunchtime, when others opened bags filled with jollof rice or meat pies, Adaeze quietly unwrapped her small nylon of Gary with groundnuts. Some days, she had nothing at all. "See her uniform," one boy teased, pointing at the faded patches. "Her father cannot even buy new clothes." Adaeze lowered her head, fighting back tears. But when school ended and she saw Chike waiting outside, dusty and tired from the day's labor, her heart softened. She ran into his arms. "Did you learn something new today?" he asked, wiping the sweat off his brow. "Yes, Daddy," she whispered, forcing a smile. That night, as they sat together under the dim light of a kerosene lamp, Adaeze confessed, "They laugh at me, Daddy. They say we are poor." Chike took her small hands in his rough palms and looked into her eyes. "Adaeze, let them laugh. Their laughter will not stop your destiny. One day, you will rise, and those same people will clap for you." His words wrapped around her like a shield, giving her courage for another day. The zinc roof rattled as the wind whistled through the cracks. Inside their room, the air was heavy with silence. There was no food that night. Adaeze sat quietly on the mat, holding her stomach. Her eyes followed her father, who paced the room, restless. He had worked all day, but the little he earned went into paying her school fees. Finally, he sat beside her, pulling her close. "I'm sorry, my Adaeze," he said, his voice breaking. She leaned her head on his chest. "It's okay, Daddy. I'm not hungry." But her trembling body betrayed the lie. To distract her, Chike began to tell her stories. Tales of brave kings and wise queens, of villages that survived against all odds. His voice was tired, but filled with love. Slowly, Adaeze's breathing steadied, and she drifted to sleep in his arms. Chike stared at her small, peaceful face. Hunger gnawed at him, but his greater pain was knowing his little girl deserved more. With tears in his eyes, he whispered into the night, "God, give me strength. I cannot fail her. That night, though their stomachs were empty, their bond grew stronger than ever. One Saturday afternoon, as the neighborhood children played football in the dusty street, Adaeze sat on a wooden stool outside their room. A small piece of chalk in her hand, she sketched shapes and letters on a broken slab of concrete. Her father returned from the market, his shirt soaked in sweat. He paused, watching her draw with such focus and grace. The lines were neat, the words well-formed, far beyond her age. "Adaeze," he called gently, "who taught you to write like this?" She looked up shyly. "I just watch the teacher, Daddy. And when we don't have books, I practice on the floor." Chike's eyes widened, a flicker of pride breaking through his tiredness. He crouched beside her and stroked her hair. "My daughter, you are a star. One day, the world will see you." That evening, he found an old notebook thrown away in the market. Carefully, he stitched the pages back together and handed it to her like it was gold. "Here, Adaeze, write your future in this book." Her small smile lit up the room brighter than the kerosene lamp. Weeks later, Chike decided to swallow his pride. He carried Adaeze by the hand to his elder brother's house. His brother, a well-to-do trader, lived in a bigger house across town. "Brother, I need help," Chike said, his voice trembling. "Adaeze is gifted. I want her to stay in school, but the load is too heavy for me alone." His brother frowned, folding his arms. "Chike, when we told you to marry wisely, you refused. Now your wife has left, and you want to pour your burden on us?" Adaeze stood quietly beside her father, clutching the little patched notebook to her chest. Her big eyes darted from her uncle to her father. "Please, just support her education," Chike begged. "Not for me, for her." But his brother shook his head. "I have my own children to think of. You made your choice. Carry your load." The door was shut in their faces. As they walked home in silence, Adaeze looked up at her father. "It's okay, Daddy. We don't need them. You are enough." Chike's chest tightened, but he held her hand tighter, his heart torn between shame and determination. That night, he whispered once more to himself, "No matter what, I will not let her down." The signs began quietly. At first, it was just a cough that lingered, then sharp pains in Chike's chest whenever he carried heavy loads at the market. He brushed it aside, determined not to show weakness before Adaeze. But one hot afternoon, as he bent to lift a sack of beans, his body gave way. He collapsed on the dusty floor, gasping for breath. Traders rushed to help, fanning him and pouring water over his face. By the time he stumbled home, Adaeze's heart sank at the sight of him, his steps shaky, his face pale. "Daddy, are you okay?" she asked, panic in her voice. "I'm fine, Adaeze," he whispered, forcing a smile. But that night, when she thought he was asleep, she heard him groaning softly in pain. From then on, the market became harder. He worked fewer hours, earned less money, and the little home they had grew colder. Adaeze began to watch him with new eyes, not just as her father, but as a man breaking down. Fear crept into her young heart. What would happen if he could no longer stand for her? The next morning, Adaeze made a decision. She was only a young girl, but she couldn't sit by while her father grew weaker. Borrowing a small tray from their neighbor, she began selling sachet water on the roadside. With her little legs and shy voice, she walked among passing cars, calling out, "Pure water, pure water." Some drivers ignored her. Others bought out of pity, dropping coins into her hand. Each naira she earned, she brought back to her father. "Daddy, look," she said one evening, emptying the coins onto his palm. "I can help too." Chike's eyes filled with tears. He pulled her into his arms, his voice breaking. "You are just a child, Adaeze. You shouldn't be doing this." "But I want to," she whispered. "You always take care of me. Now let me take care of you." From then on, their roles slowly began to shift. Adaeze balanced school, chores, and street hustling, while also watching over her father. She no longer cried about hunger. She fought it with courage. And though Chike's illness weighed heavily on him, he drew strength from her small but unyielding spirit. One hot afternoon, Adaeze stood by the roadside, her small tray of sachet water balanced carefully on her head. Sweat trickled down her face as she called out, "Pure water, pure water." A sleek black SUV stopped, and the tinted window rolled down. A woman in elegant Ankara attire leaned out. Her eyes lingered on Adeeze's tired but determined face. "Little girl, why are you not in school at this hour?" she asked gently. Adeeze shifted nervously. "I go to school, but after class, I sell water. My daddy is sick." The woman's expression softened. She bought the whole tray of water, then handed Adeeze extra money. "Take this to your father." Later that week, the same woman, Mrs. Bello, came to their small apartment. She introduced herself as a teacher at a nearby secondary school. "Your daughter has something special," she told Chaik. "She's bright, determined, and gifted. I want to help her." Chaik's eyes welled up. For the first time in years, hope flickered in his heart. With Mrs. Bello's support, Adeeze's life began to change. She received new books, a proper uniform, and extra tutoring. At school, her brilliance shone. She topped her class, earning the respect of teachers and classmates alike. One afternoon, she returned home with her first award certificate. She ran into the small room, waving it excitedly. "Daddy, look, I came first." Chaik, sitting weakly on the mat, took the certificate in trembling hands. His lips quivered as tears filled his eyes. "My Adeeze, you are rising higher than I ever dreamed." From then on, Adeeze became a symbol of resilience in her community. Neighbors who once mocked her father now whispered in admiration. Though Chaik's body grew frail, he found peace watching his daughter spread her wings. For Adeeze, it was no longer just about survival. It was about building a future that would honor every sacrifice her father had made. The days grew quieter in their small room. Chaik's illness worsened. Some mornings, he could barely sit up without Adeeze's help. He watched her move about, fetching water, cooking small meals, and still finding time to study. One evening, as she bent over her school books under the glow of the kerosene lamp, Chaik's eyes filled with tears. His voice broke the silence. "Adeeze, forgive me." She looked up, startled. "Forgive you? For what, Daddy?" "For not giving you the life you deserved. Other fathers give their daughters comfort, fine clothes, even cars. But me? All I have are calloused hands and broken promises." Adeeze pushed her book aside and moved to sit beside him. She held his frail hand tightly. "Daddy, don't ever say that. You gave me love. You gave me strength. You taught me never to give up. That is worth more than riches." Her words pierced his heart, and for the first time in a long while, Chaik allowed himself to weep openly. Months later, Adeeze stood tall on the stage of her school's graduation hall. Her hair was neatly braided, and she wore a bright smile that lit up the room. In her hands, she held a certificate of excellence. Top of her class, and a recipient of the Best Student Award. "Adeeze Chaik," the principal announced. The hall erupted in applause. Teachers clapped proudly, students cheered, and in the front row, Chaik struggled to his feet. Leaning on his cane, he clapped with trembling hands, his eyes shining with tears. As Adeeze stepped down from the stage, she ran straight into his arms, holding her award up. "Daddy, this is for you. Everything I am is because of you." Chaik's voice cracked as he whispered, "You have made me the proudest father alive." That day marked not just Adeeze's triumph, but the victory of a bond forged in sacrifice, pain, and undying love. Chaik's health continued to decline, and soon he was admitted to a small local clinic. The once strong man who had carried sacks in the market now struggled to lift even a cup of water. Adeeze stayed by his side, holding his hand, wiping his sweat, reading aloud to him when his nights grew restless. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the room in orange light, Chaik called her name softly. "Adeeze." "Yes, Daddy." His voice trembled. "If I leave this world tomorrow, promise me you won't hate me for the life I could not give you." Tears rolled down her cheeks as she shook her head. "Daddy, don't say that. You gave me everything that mattered. Love, sacrifice, courage. Without you, I would not be here." He broke into sobs, his chest rising and falling with years of bottled regret. Adeeze leaned over and hugged him tightly, crying into his chest. "I forgive you, Daddy," she whispered, "because there's nothing to forgive. You are my hero." In that moment, the clinic room was filled with healing, of wounds that had lived longer than hunger. Years later, Adaeze walked across the stage of a prestigious hall in Lagos, this time as a young woman launching her first major achievement. A scholarship award ceremony she had been invited to for her outstanding performance. The spotlight shone on her as she spoke into the microphone. "I dedicate this moment to the man who raised me, a man who sacrificed everything so I could stand here today, my father." The crowd erupted in applause. In the front row, Chike sat in a clean suit Adaeze had saved up to buy for him. His face was thinner, but his smile was brighter than ever. When the ceremony ended, Adaeze walked him slowly to the stage. Together, father and daughter stood before the audience. She raised his hand high and said, "This is my father, my strength, my reason." The hall rose to their feet in ovation. Chike's eyes brimmed with tears as he whispered to her, "You kept my promise alive." For the first time in years, he no longer felt like a failure. He felt reborn. Father and daughter, bound by struggle and love, had finally found their victory together. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more touching stories that will inspire and move your heart.